Captain Lee Dae-ho stood on the bridge of the Terra Nova and watched the stars bend around them. The warp drive was working perfectly. After 300 years of dreaming, humans were finally traveling to another star system. The ship carried 200 people to explore Kepler 442, a system that looked promising for life. "Captain, we're dropping out of warp in 30 seconds, said engineer Yoon Hairi from her station. Her fingers moved quickly over the controls. She had built this warp drive herself and knew every part of it. Dae-ho nodded. "All stations, prepare for normal space." The stars stopped bending. Through the big window, they could see a yellow star much like Earth's sun. 3 planets orbited around it. The middle planet looked blue and green, just like the old pictures of Earth before the pollution. "That's our target," said Dr. Park Soo-jin, the team's scientist. She had spent years studying alien worlds from Earth. "Kepler 442b should have water and maybe even life." Commander Kim Tae-woo checked his security screens. "No ships detected, no radio signals. Looks empty just like we expected." They spent 2 days flying toward the planet. It was beautiful. Blue oceans covered most of it with green and brown land masses. White clouds swirled in the atmosphere. It looked perfect for human life. But something was wrong. "Captain," Hairi called out, "I'm getting strange energy readings from the planet's surface. The patterns don't match anything natural." Soo-jin looked at her own screens. "I see them too. The readings are coming from the northern continent. They look almost like building materials." Dae-ho frowned. "Buildings? But our telescopes showed this planet was empty." "Maybe the buildings are very old," Soo-jin said. "Or maybe they're underground." They landed the Terra Nova near the energy source. The landing site was a wide plain covered with purple grass. Strange trees with silver leaves grew in small groups. The air was clean and breathable. Everything seemed peaceful. Soo-jin led a team to investigate the energy readings. They walked for 2 hours through the alien landscape. The readings got stronger as they moved north. Finally, they reached a small hill covered with the same purple grass. "The energy is coming from directly below us," Hairi said, checking her scanner. "About 50 meters down." "Let's dig," Dae-ho ordered. They used laser diggers to cut through the soil. The work was hard, but after 6 hours, they hit something. Solid, it wasn't rock. It was smooth and dark like black glass. "What is this material?" Soo-jin wondered, running her hands over the surface. They dug wider, exposing more of the strange surface. It wasn't flat. They could see corners and edges, like they had found the top of a huge building buried underground. "This is definitely artificial," Soo-jin said. "Someone built this." They found what looked like a doorway. It was sealed shut, but Hairi's tools detected hollow spaces behind it. The door was covered with symbols that looked almost familiar, but none of them could read the writing. "Should we try to open it?" Tae-woo asked. He didn't like the idea of opening alien doors. "We came here to explore," Dae-ho said. "Let's see what's inside." Hairi used a small explosive charge to crack the door. Ancient air rushed out, carrying a strange smell like ozone and metal. They waited an hour to make sure the air was safe, then turned on their lights and stepped inside. The room beyond was enormous. The ceiling disappeared into darkness above them. Strange machines lined the walls, all made from the same black material as the door. In the center of the room stood a circle of tall crystal pillars, each one glowing with soft blue light. "My God," Soo-jin whispered. "How old is this place?" Hairi checked her instruments. "The energy readings are off the charts. These crystals are generating more power than our entire ship." They walked carefully toward the crystal circle. The pillars were beautiful, perfectly clear, except for the blue light that seemed to come from inside them. Each crystal was covered with the same strange symbols they had seen on the door. Soo-jin approached the nearest crystal. Something about it called to her. The symbols seemed to move and shift as she looked at them. Without thinking, she reached out and placed her hand on the crystal's surface. The world exploded with light. Sujin screamed as images flooded her mind. She saw stars and planets, but not as they were now. She saw the galaxy as it had been long, ego, with different patterns of light and darkness. She saw great ships moving between the stars, ships bigger than cities. She saw worlds covered with the same crystal structures they had just found. And she saw Earth. But this Earth was different. It was the center of everything. Lines of light connected it to every other world in the galaxy. Earth wasn't a small, lonely planet. It was the heart of a vast empire that reached across all the stars. The images changed. She saw people who looked human, but they were more than human. They could fly without ships. They could change matter with their thoughts. They could speak to each other across impossible distances, using only their minds. They were like gods. And then she saw the symbol. It appeared on every ship, every building, every world. It was carved into the crystal she was touching. It meant primeval dominion in a language that was old before Earth had oceans. Sujin fell backward, gasping. The crystal continued to glow, but now all the crystals in the circle were active. Light danced between them, creating patterns in the air. "Sujin, are you okay?" Daeho helped her to her feet. "Captain," she said, her voice shaking, "this isn't an alien structure. This is human." "That's impossible. Humans only reached space 200 years ago." "No," Sujin said, looking at the dancing lights above the crystals. "We reached space 50,000 years ago. We ruled the galaxy. We were called the Primeval Ones." As she spoke, the crystals grew brighter. The patterns of light began to form shapes, star maps, pictures of planets, symbols that somehow made perfect sense to all of them now. Haeri stared at her scanner in shock. "Captain, the crystals are responding to us. They're scanning our DNA, and they're sending out some kind of signal." "A signal to where?" Taewoo demanded. "Everywhere," Haeri whispered. "It's going to every star system in the galaxy." Daeho felt something changing inside his head. Memories that weren't his own began to surface. He saw himself standing on the bridge of a ship that could destroy planets. He saw fleets of 1,000 vessels answering his commands. He remembered being more than human, being one of the rulers of the stars. But they weren't his memories. They belonged to someone who had lived and died long before Earth had humans. Someone who looked exactly like him. "We need to get back to the ship," he said, but his voice sounded different now, stronger, more confident. "We need to contact Earth immediately." "Why?" Taewoo asked. Daeho looked at his security chief, and Taewoo stepped back in surprise. The captain's eyes were glowing with a faint blue light, the same color as the crystals. "Because," Daeho said, "the galaxy is about to remember who we really are, and they're going to be very afraid." The signal raced outward from Kepler 442 at faster than light speed. On 1,000 worlds, in 100 alien cities, emergency alarms began to sound. Ancient detection systems that had waited 50,000 years suddenly came alive with warnings that chilled the blood of every non-human intelligence in the galaxy. The Primeval Ones had returned, as the Terra Nova's crew made their way back. To their ship, none of them noticed the changes beginning in their own bodies. Their reflexes were faster. Their thoughts were clearer. Their eyes occasionally glowed with that same blue light. Deep in their DNA, locks that had been closed for 50 millennia were starting to open. Powers that their ancestors had possessed were beginning to wake up. And somewhere in the space, between dimensions, the consciousness of the original Primeval Ones felt their children taking the first steps back toward their true destiny. The galaxy would never be the same. Dr. Kang Bo-ra sat in her office at Seoul University, surrounded by old books and ancient texts. She had spent her life studying human history, but the message from the Terra Nova changed everything. According to Captain Lee Dae-ho's report, humans had once ruled the galaxy. It sounded impossible, but Bo-Ra had been finding strange connections in Earth's oldest stories. She opened a book about Korean mythology and stared at a picture of the Heavenly Emperor. The figure in the drawing looked exactly like a normal human, but the text said he could fly between stars and command the forces of nature. Similar stories existed in every culture on Earth. Gods and heroes who could do impossible things, who came from the sky and returned to the stars. What if they weren't myths? She whispered to herself. Her computer chimed with an urgent message. The government wanted all historians to search for any evidence of ancient space travel. Bo-Ra smiled. She had been doing that for 20 years, but no one had listened before. She pulled out files full of strange artifacts that didn't fit with normal human history. Stone carvings that showed people in what looked like spacesuits. Cave paintings of flying vehicles. Metal objects found in rocks that were millions of years old. The phone rang. Dr. Kang, this is President Ko Sung-min's office. The president needs to see you immediately. Bo-Ra grabbed her research and ran. While Bo-Ra rushed to meet the president, something much larger was happening in space. 3 massive fleets were approaching Earth. They had been traveling for 2 days, moving faster than any human ship could go. The first fleet belonged to the Vextar hegemony. Their ships were long and silver, like giant needles pointed at Earth. The second fleet was from the Ziltan Empire, with red and black ships that looked like weapons built for war. The third fleet came from the Nexarian coalition. Their vessels strange and organic, like living creatures swimming through space. Each fleet carried millions of soldiers and enough firepower to destroy planets. But they weren't coming to attack Earth. They were coming to surrender. High Counselor An Ji-woo stood on the bridge of the largest Vextar ship. She looked human, with black hair and brown eyes, but she was 300 years old. Her people lived much longer than humans, though. They had originally been created by humans. Are you certain about this? Asked her aide, a younger Vextar named Pak Il-sung. Maybe the signal was a mistake. Maybe these humans aren't really the primeval ones. The genetic scanners don't lie, Ji-woo replied. I've seen the data from Kepler 442. The crystals recognize them as primary helix, the original genetic template. These are definitely their descendants. But they seem so primitive. They only just invented warp drive. Ji-woo turned away from the window. That's what makes them so dangerous. They don't know what they are yet. When they figure it out, when their abilities start to wake up. She shuddered. I've read the old records. At their peak, a single primeval could destroy our entire fleet with a thought. On the Ziltan flagship, Ambassador Cho Min-ho was having a similar conversation with his generals. The Ziltan looked more like humans than the Vextar did, but they were built for war, stronger, faster, with reflexes that could track a bullet in flight. Sir, our ancestors served the primeval ones for 10,000 years, said General Nam Si-woo. We know how to fight them. Our ancestors served them because they had no choice, Cho Min-ho replied. The primeval ones didn't need weapons or armies. They could reach into your mind and turn off your brain like switching off a light. They could change the laws of physics around them. They were living gods, but they're gone. They disappeared 50,000 years ago. They didn't disappear. They transcended. They moved beyond physical reality to explore higher dimensions. But they left their children behind. He pointed at the blue planet growing larger on their screens. And now those children are starting to remember who they really are. Earth's governments were in panic. The alien fleets had been detected by every telescope and radar system on the planet. Military forces around the world prepared for invasion, but the aliens made no aggressive moves. They simply waited in orbit, as if asking for permission to approach. President Ko Sung-min stood in the emergency command center, watching the displays that showed the 3 massive fleets. Dr. Kang Bo-Ra stood beside him, her arms full of research. Files. Dr. Kang, you've studied ancient history your entire life. Have you ever seen anything like this? Bo-Ra looked at the alien ships, then at her files. Mr. President, I think this has happened before. Not exactly like this, but contact with other worlds. The evidence has always been there, hidden in our oldest stories. She opened one of her files and showed him a stone tablet covered with strange symbols. This was found in a cave in Mongolia. It's over 40,000 years old. The symbols match the ones Captain Lee found on Kepler 442. What does it say? If I'm translating correctly, it's a star map. It shows Earth at the center of an empire that covered the entire galaxy. And it has a date, 51,000 years ago. Before the president could respond, every communication system on Earth activated at once. Televisions, radios, computers, even cell phones all displayed the same message. A woman's face appeared on the screens. She looked Korean, with kind eyes and silver hair. People of Earth, she said in perfect Korean, though similar messages, were being broadcast in every human language. I am High Counselor An Ji-woo of the Vextar Hegemony. Please do not be afraid. We come not as invaders, but as servants returning to their masters. The president stared at the screen. Servants. For 50,000 years we have ruled the galaxy in your absence. We are the children of the species you created and uplifted to serve alongside you. We are the Vextar, the Ziltan, and the Nexarian. And we have been waiting for your return. Dr. Kang's hands shook as she flipped through her files. The old stories. They talk about humans creating other intelligent species. We called them our younger brothers and star children. I always thought they were metaphors. On the screen, Ji-woo continued. You knew us by different names then. We were your engineers, your warriors, your explorers. When the primeval ones transcended physical reality, they left us to care for the galaxy until your return. That day has come. We know this is confusing for you. You have forgotten your true nature, forgotten the powers that sleep in your blood. But the awakening has begun. Soon, you will remember what you truly are. President Ko looked around the command center. Every person in the room was staring at the screen with the same expression of shock and disbelief. We request permission to send representatives to Earth. We have much to discuss about the future of the galaxy. We also bring warnings. Not all of the galaxy is pleased by your return. There are those who will try to stop your awakening before it completes. The transmission ended, leaving Earth in stunned silence. Dr. Kang opened another file. This one, containing DNA research from the 2300s. Mr. President, look at this. Geneticists found segments of human DNA that they couldn't explain. Sections that seemed designed for purposes we didn't understand. They called it junk DNA, but what if it wasn't junk? What are you saying? What if those DNA segments contain the genetic memory of our abilities? What if we really were gods once, and we just forgot how to use our powers? As if responding to her words, reports began coming in from around the world. Strange things were happening to people who had been watching the alien broadcast. Some reported feeling suddenly smarter, able to solve complex problems they had never understood before. Others claimed they could sense other people's thoughts. A few even reported being able to move small objects without touching them. In a bio hospital in Busan, a doctor named Lim Ye-jin was treating a patient when she suddenly understood exactly what was wrong without running any tests. Her mind seemed to work faster than it ever had before, processing information at an incredible speed. In Seoul, a teenager named Jeon Ha-neul was arguing with her parents when every piece of furniture in the room moved 3 inches to the left. Her parents stared at her in shock, and Ha-neul ran to her room, afraid of what was happening to her. Around the world, millions of people were experiencing similar awakenings. The alien broadcast had somehow triggered something in human DNA, something that had been sleeping for 50,000 years. President Ko made his decision. Open communications with the alien fleets. Tell them they can send their representatives. Sir, are you sure? Asked his military advisor. This could be a trick. Dr. Kang looked up from her files. Mr. President, I don't think they're lying. The evidence has been here all along. We just never put it together. Humans didn't evolve on Earth. We came from somewhere else. Somewhere much more advanced. And now, we're going home. As the first alien shuttles prepared to land on Earth, none of the humans realized that their casual acceptance of the impossible was itself a sign that their true nature was awakening. The primeval ones had never been surprised by miraculous events, because to them, miracles were just another tool to be used. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see what the children of gods would do when they finally remembered their inheritance. 3 weeks after first contact, the world had changed completely. The alien representatives had landed in major cities around Earth, and everywhere they went, more humans began to experience strange new abilities. Dr. Lim Ye-jin walked through Seoul National Hospital, trying to understand what was happening to her. Yesterday, she had been a normal neuroscientist. Today, her mind worked so fast that she could read entire medical textbooks in minutes and remember every word perfectly. Dr. Lim called her colleague, Dr. Song Jae-hyun. The alien patient in room 302 is asking for you specifically. Ye-jin nodded and walked to the room. Inside, High Counselor An Ji-woo lay on a hospital bed. She had been injured in a shuttle accident during landing, but she had insisted on being treated by human doctors. You wanted to see me? Ye-jin asked. Ji-woo smiled. Your abilities are manifesting faster than we expected. How does it feel to think at 10 times normal human speed? Ye-jin stared at her. How did you know? Because I've seen it before. In the old records, when your ancestors first awakened to their true nature, your brain is remembering how to access neural pathways that have been dormant for 50,000 years. Is this happening to everyone? No. The awakening affects each person differently. Some develop enhanced intelligence like you. Others gain physical abilities or psychic powers. It depends on your genetic heritage and your emotional state. Before Ye-jin could respond, an alarm sounded throughout the hospital. She ran to the window and looked outside. In the distance, she could see smoke rising from the city center. John Hanul stood in the ruins of what used to be a shopping mall. She was 17 years old, and she had just destroyed an entire building with her mind. Around her, rescue workers carefully approached the debris, looking for survivors. I didn't mean to, she said to Colonel Nam Si-woo, who had been sent to investigate. I was just angry. My friends were making fun of me for believing the aliens. I wanted them to stop talking. And then, this happened. Nam Si-woo looked at the destroyed building. The walls had been torn apart as if a giant hand had crushed them. How many people were inside? About 50. But I think they're all okay. I can feel them. They're scared, but they're alive. You can feel them? Hanul nodded. I can sense everyone around me. Their emotions, their thoughts. It started 3 days ago, right after I watched the alien broadcast. Nam Si-woo had been experiencing changes, too. As a military strategist, he had always been good at predicting enemy movements, but now he could see battle outcomes before they happened. In training exercises, he won every scenario with perfect tactics that seemed to come from nowhere. Hanul, I need you to try something. Can you sense the people trapped in the building? Can you move the debris without hurting them? The teenager closed her eyes and concentrated. Around them, chunks of concrete began to rise into the air. They moved slowly and carefully, creating paths for the rescue workers. Within an hour, all 50 people had been safely evacuated. How did I do that? Hanul asked. I think you're becoming what we used to be, Nam Si-woo replied. According to the aliens, our ancestors could reshape matter with their thoughts. Across the city, former engineer Baek Dong-hyun was having his own revelations. He had been working on a broken computer when he discovered he could fix it just by touching it. Not only could he repair technology, he could understand how any machine worked just by looking at it. At the alien embassy, he met with Ambassador Cho Min-ho from the Ziltan Empire. The alien looked almost human, but he was much taller and stronger than any human should be. "Your people created us to be warriors and protectors," Cho Min-ho explained. "We were given enhanced physical abilities and combat instincts. But you gave yourselves something even better, the ability to control technology itself." Dong Hyun touched a strange alien device on the table. Immediately, he understood its purpose and how to operate it. "This is a communication array. It can send messages faster than light speed across the entire galaxy." "Very good. Now try this." Cho Min-ho placed a small crystal on the table. When Dong Hyun touched it, the crystal began to glow. Information flowed through his mind: star maps, technical specifications for ships, weapon designs that were millions of years advanced beyond anything humans had built. "This is a memory crystal from your ancestors. It contains the technical knowledge of the primeval dominion. With your abilities, you can access all of it. Why are you showing me this?" Cho Min-ho's expression became serious. "Because not everyone in the galaxy is happy about your return. The Nexarian Coalition views you as a threat. They've spent 50,000 years building their own empire, and they won't give it up easily." Meanwhile, President Ko Sung-min was dealing with reports of awakening humans from around the world. Some were beneficial: doctors who could diagnose diseases instantly, engineers who could design impossible machines, scientists who could solve complex problems in minutes. But others were dangerous. In Moscow, a man had accidentally destroyed a city block when he sneezed. In New York, a woman had started a riot when her emotions became so intense that everyone around her felt them too. In Tokyo, a teenager had somehow created a small thunderstorm in his bedroom. "We need to help these people control their abilities," Ko told his advisors. Before someone gets seriously hurt, Dr. Kang Bo-ra had been working with the alien representatives to understand the awakening process. She had discovered that the abilities seemed to be triggered by strong emotions and enhanced by understanding one's true heritage. "Mr. President, I think I know how to help them. The aliens have offered to teach us meditation techniques that our ancestors used to control their powers. They call it primeval discipline. Is it safe? According to their records, it's not just safe, it's necessary. Without proper training, awakened humans can be dangerous to themselves and others." Bo-ra had been experiencing her own changes. Her ability to understand ancient languages had improved dramatically. She could now read texts that had puzzled scholars for centuries. More importantly, she was beginning to remember things that had never happened to her personally. She dreamed of flying between stars, of standing on alien worlds, of commanding fleets of ships that could cross the galaxy in days. These weren't dreams. They were genetic memories from her ancestors. The training centers were established within a week. Humans with manifesting abilities were brought together to learn control. The alien representatives served as teachers, sharing techniques that had been developed over thousands of years. Hanul learned to focus her telekinetic abilities, moving objects with precision instead of destroying everything around her. Ye Jin discovered she could not only think faster, but could also share her enhanced thoughts with others, creating temporary mental networks. Nam Si-woo found that his tactical abilities extended beyond military strategy. He could predict the outcomes of any complex situation, from economic trends to weather patterns. The aliens told him this was called probability perception, the ability to see the most likely futures. But the most surprising development came from Dong Hyun. While working with alien technology, he discovered he could do more than just understand machines. He could communicate with them. Electronic devices responded to his thoughts as if they were alive. "This is impossible," he told Ambassador Cho Min-ho. "Machines don't have consciousness. Primeval technology was different from what you build today. Your ancestors created machines that were part biological, part mechanical. They could think and learn, and they were designed to respond to human mental commands. As if to prove his point, the alien ship they were standing in began to hum softly. Lights flickered in patterns that seemed almost like a greeting. "The ship recognizes you," Cho Min-ho said. "It remembers what you are." Around the world, more humans were awakening every day. Not everyone developed dramatic abilities like Hanyul or Ye-jin. Some gained enhanced intuition, perfect memory, or the ability to learn new skills incredibly quickly. But all of them shared one common experience. They felt more complete, as if they had been missing something important their entire lives. The aliens watched these developments with a mixture of hope and fear. Hope because the return of the primeval ones meant the galaxy might finally know peace again. Fear because they remembered what happened the last time the primeval ones had used their full power. High Counselor Ji-woo met with President Ko in Seoul. She looked tired, despite her advanced alien physiology. "Your people are awakening faster than we expected," she said. "In the old days, it took generations for the full abilities to manifest. But your descendants are accessing power levels that took your ancestors centuries to achieve. Is that bad?" It could be. Power without wisdom is dangerous, even for the primeval ones. Your ancestors learned to transcend physical reality because they realized that unlimited power in the physical universe could destroy everything they loved. "Are you saying we're too dangerous?" Ji-woo shook her head. "I'm saying you're dangerous to yourselves. The Nexarian coalition is already mobilizing their fleets. They plan to attack Earth before your awakening is complete. They believe that, if they can kill enough of you, the genetic memory will be broken and the rest will revert to normal humans." Ko felt something cold in his stomach. "How long do we have?" The Nexarian fleet arrived 3 days early. Their ships appeared at the edge of Earth's solar system like dark clouds blocking out the stars. There were thousands of them, each one built for a single purpose: the complete destruction of human life. General Won In-ho stood in the command center beneath Seoul, watching the display screens that showed the approaching enemy. Unlike the other alien representatives, the Nexarians had never shown themselves to humans. They communicated only through mechanical voices and refused all diplomatic contact. "They're not here to talk," he told President Ko Sung-min. "According to the Vextar intelligence reports, the Nexarians aren't a single species anymore. They're a collective consciousness that has absorbed dozens of different alien races. They view anything that threatens their unity as a disease to be eliminated." Ko looked at the tactical displays. Earth's military had always been impressive by human standards, but their most advanced warships looked like toys compared to the alien fleet. "How many ships do we have?" 200 combat vessels, plus whatever the Vextar and Ziltan can contribute. But, Mr. President, our ships aren't the real weapons anymore." Ko nodded. Over the past 6 weeks, the awakening had accelerated, beyond anything the aliens had expected. Humans around the world were displaying abilities that matched the legendary powers of their ancestors. And unlike the gradual awakening process described in ancient records, these new abilities were manifesting fully formed, as if 50,000 years of genetic memory were downloading directly into human consciousness. John Ha-Newell had moved beyond simple telekinesis. She could now manipulate space and time itself, creating bubbles where the laws of physics worked differently. During training exercises, she had made an entire mountain disappear for 3 minutes, moving it to a different dimension before bringing it back. Dr. Lim Ye-jin had discovered that her enhanced thinking speed was just the beginning. She could now process information from multiple sources simultaneously and share her consciousness with other awakened humans, creating a mental network that could solve problems faster than any computer. Baek Dong-hyun had stopped needing physical tools entirely. He could reshape matter at the atomic level, building machines that existed partially in normal space and partially in higher dimensions. His workshop contained devices that could generate energy by manipulating gravity itself. But the most dramatic change had happened to Colonel Nam Siwoo. His ability to predict outcomes had evolved into something much more powerful. He could now see multiple potential futures simultaneously and choose which one would become reality. In the final training exercise before the Nexarian arrival, he had led a simulation where Earth's defenders faced impossible odds, and he had found the one path to victory among millions of possible defeats. "General Wan," reported Lieutenant Park Min-young from her sensor station. "The Nexarian fleet is moving into attack formation. They'll reach Earth orbit in 6 hours." Wan In-ho nodded. His own awakening had been different from the others. While John Hanul could bend reality and Ye Jin could think at superhuman speeds, Wan In-ho had gained the ability to coordinate with every human on Earth simultaneously. He could create a battlefield awareness network that connected millions of minds into a single strategic consciousness. "Activate the Primeval Defense Network," he ordered. Around the world, every human with awakened abilities felt the connection form in their minds. It wasn't telepathy exactly. It was more like becoming part of a vast organism with millions of eyes and hands. John Hanul, floating above Seoul, could suddenly sense the movements of every Nexarian ship. Lim Ye-jin, working in an underground bunker, could feel the tactical thoughts of every human commander. Dong-hyun, standing in his workshop, found his consciousness linked to every piece of technology on Earth. The first Nexarian attack came without warning. Thousands of energy beams lanced down from orbit designed to disrupt human neural patterns and prevent further awakening. The beams should have killed millions of people instantly. Instead, something impossible happened. The energy strikes hit Earth and simply disappeared, absorbed into a protective field that surrounded the entire planet. Jeon Hanul and a dozen other reality manipulators had worked together to create a barrier that existed in 11 dimensions simultaneously, deflecting the attack into empty space. "That's not possible," whispered Ambassador Cho Min-ho, watching, from the alien embassy. "Even the ancient primeval ones couldn't shield an entire planet." High Counselor Ji-woo stood beside him, her face pale with shock. "The awakening is happening faster than our records show. These humans aren't just remembering their abilities, they're surpassing them." In space, Admiral Shin Yoon-young led Earth's small fleet against the massive Nexarian armada. Her ships were outnumbered 50-1, but that didn't matter anymore. The moment the battle began, Yoon-young discovered she could navigate through hyperspace without instruments, finding paths through dimensions that didn't exist in normal physics. Her flagship, the New Terra, suddenly appeared inside the Nexarian formation, having traveled through a space fold that bypassed three-dimensional movement entirely. Before the enemy could react, Dong-hyun's weapon systems activated. Not the simple missiles and lasers the ship had been built with, but reality-warping devices that could unmake matter at the quantum level. 3 Nexarian dreadnoughts simply ceased to exist, not destroyed but edited out of reality as if they had never been built. "All ships, follow my lead!" Yoon-young commanded, and her entire fleet began moving through impossible trajectories, appearing and disappearing across the battlefield like ghosts made of metal and fire. On Earth, the ground war began when Nexarian landing craft broke through the orbital defenses. These weren't normal soldiers. They were biomechanical constructs designed specifically to kill awakened humans. Their weapons could disrupt the neural patterns that allowed humans to access their abilities, but Wan In-ho was ready for them. Through the Primeval Defense Network, he coordinated the response of every awakened human on the planet. In Seoul, John Hanul created gravitational anomalies that crushed entire landing zones. In New York, a former accountant named Kim Soo-won discovered she could accelerate her personal timeline, moving so fast that enemy soldiers appeared frozen while she dismantled their weapons with her bare hands. The Nexarians had planned for a war against primitive humans with basic technology. Instead, they found themselves fighting gods who could rewrite the laws of physics. But the collective consciousness of the Nexarian overmind was not easily defeated. As their initial assault failed, they adapted their tactics. If they couldn't kill the awakened humans directly, they would destroy everything the humans cared about. The second wave of attacks targeted Earth's cities with weapons designed to cause maximum civilian casualties. The Nexarians calculated that the awakened humans would exhaust themselves trying to protect everyone, making them vulnerable to a final assault. They were wrong about the exhaustion, but right about the protection instinct. When Nexarian bombers approached Seoul, John Hanul didn't just deflect their weapons. She reached out with her abilities and grabbed the entire enemy squadron, holding 12 ships motionless in mid-air while she decided what to do with them. "I can feel the pilots inside," she told Wan In-ho through their mental link. "They're not evil. They're scared. The Overmind has been controlling their thoughts for so long that they don't remember who they used to be. Can you free them?" "I think so, but I need help." Dr. Lim Ye-jin joined her consciousness to Hanul's, bringing her enhanced mental processing power to bear on the problem. Together, they reached into the minds of the captured pilots and began carefully removing the Overmind's control programming. It was delicate work. One mistake could destroy the aliens' personalities entirely. But they succeeded. One by one, the Nexarian pilots awakened to their own individual consciousness for the first time in centuries. They remembered being part of a species called the Kalani, peaceful explorers who had been absorbed by the Overmind 3,000 years ago. "We were forced," one of them transmitted to Earth. "The Overmind promised unity, but it gave us only slavery. If you can free our minds, we will fight alongside you." The tide of battle turned when the ancient AI awakened. Deep in the ruins on Kepler 442, the crystal structures that had first triggered humanity's awakening suddenly blazed with light. A consciousness that had slept for 50,000 years stirred to life. "Children," said a voice that resonated. In the minds of every awakened human, "I am Ryu Kyung-min, last guardian of the primeval archives. Your ancestors asked me to watch over you until you were ready to reclaim your heritage." The AI's consciousness reached across space, connecting with every piece of primeval technology scattered throughout the galaxy. Ancient weapons platforms that had been hidden in asteroid fields suddenly came online. Defensive systems built into the fabric of space itself activated after millennia of dormancy. But most importantly, Ryu Kyung-min began teaching the awakened humans how to use their full potential. Through direct mental interface, he showed them techniques that their ancestors had developed over millions of years of evolution beyond normal humanity. 6 months after the war ended, the galaxy was a very different place. The Nexarian Overmind was gone, its former victims free to rediscover their individual identities. The Vextar and Ziltan had officially surrendered their governing authority to humanity. And on 300 worlds, awakened humans were learning to use abilities that made them living gods. President Ko Sung-min stood on the observation deck of the new orbital station above Earth. Through the massive windows, he could see ships from dozens of different species arriving for the first galactic assembly. But today, he wasn't thinking about politics or diplomacy. He was thinking about the choice that would define humanity's future. "Mr. President," said Dr. Kang Bo-ra, approaching from behind, "the assembly is ready to begin." Ko nodded, but didn't turn around. "Bo-ra, do you ever wonder if we're making the right choice? Our ancestors had these same powers, and they chose to leave physical reality behind. Maybe they knew something we don't." Bo-ra joined him at the window. Over the past months, her abilities had continued to grow. She could now access the genetic memories of hundreds of generations, experiencing the full history of the primeval, ones as if she had lived it herself. "I've seen their memories," she said. They didn't leave because they were afraid of their power. They left because they had accomplished everything they wanted to in this reality. They had created a galaxy full of intelligent life, guided countless species to enlightenment, and built wonders that lasted for millions of years. When there was nothing left to do here, they moved on to explore higher dimensions. And now? There's work to do again. The galaxy needs guidance, not abandonment. They walked together toward the assembly hall, where representatives from over 200 species waited. The hall itself was a marvel of combined technology. Primeval crystal matrices merged with Vextar engineering and Ziltan craftsmanship. It existed partially in normal space and partially in higher dimensions, allowing beings from different realities to interact safely. At the center of the hall sat the Circle of Voices, 12 chairs representing the major powers of the galaxy. 3 were occupied by the traditional alien leaders, High Counselor An Jiwoo of the Vextar, Ambassador Cho Minho of the Ziltan, and Friedmine Talvin, representing the former Nexarian species. The remaining 9 chairs were for humanities, new leaders chosen not by politics, but by the scope of their awakened abilities. General Wan In-ho sat in the chair of military coordination, his consciousness still linked to defense networks across 300 worlds. Dr. Lim Ye-jin occupied the seat of scientific advancement, her enhanced mind capable of solving problems that had puzzled researchers for centuries. John Hanul, now 18, sat in the chair of reality management. Her ability to manipulate space-time had grown so powerful that she could literally create new dimensions when the galaxy needed them. Admiral Shin Yun-young held the position of Exploration Command, leading fleets that could travel to distant galaxies in hours. Baek Dong-hyun managed technological integration from his chair, overseeing the combination of primeval abilities with alien technology. The other chairs belonged to humans whose awakening had taken unique forms. Sage Hwang Mi-young could communicate directly with the transcended consciousness of the original primeval ones, serving as a bridge between dimensions. Captain Song Jae-hyun commanded the first integrated fleets where humans and aliens served as true equals. And in the chair of diplomatic relations sat Nam Soo-jin, the former archaeologist whose first contact with primeval technology had started the entire awakening. President Ko took his place in the final chair, not as ruler of the galaxy, but as coordinator of this new alliance. "Friends," he began, his voice carried by translation systems to every species in the hall. "We gather today to establish something that has never existed before, a galactic government based on cooperation rather than domination." The next several hours were spent discussing the practical details of governing a galaxy. How would trade be regulated between species with completely different biologies? How would disputes be resolved when the parties might exist in different dimensions? How could they ensure that awakened humans didn't accidentally misuse their reality-shaping abilities? But the most important discussion came when Sage Hwang Mi-young stood to address the assembly. "I have been in contact with the transcended ones, our ancestors who left physical reality 50,000 years ago. They are pleased by our choice to remain and guide the galaxy rather than follow them immediately. But they have given us a warning." The hall fell silent. The galaxy we know is only one small part of a much larger multiverse. There are realities where life never evolved, where entropy has won completely. There are also realities where hostile intelligences have consumed everything, turning entire universes into feeding grounds. Our ancestors chose to explore these other realities because someone needed to stand guard against the threats they contain. "What does this mean for us?" asked Jiwoo. "It means that eventually some of us will need to make the same choice our ancestors did. But not yet. For now, our responsibility is here, helping the galaxy mature into something worthy of the multiverse's protection." The assembly voted unanimously to establish the new primeval order, a governing system where humans would serve as guardians and guides, but every species would retain autonomy over their own worlds and cultures. Unlike the original primeval dominion, this new order would be based on cooperation and growth rather than control. Over the following year, the changes became visible throughout the galaxy. On Vextar worlds, ancient technologies were combined, with human abilities to create cities that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The former Nexarian species, freed from their collective consciousness, rediscovered individual creativity and began producing art that could literally reshape the emotions of those who experienced it. Earth became the galaxy's center of learning, where young beings from hundreds of species came to study alongside awakened humans. The most promising students were taught basic reality manipulation techniques, though none could match the full power of human abilities. Jian Hanul established the Academy of Dimensional Sciences, where she taught carefully selected students how to navigate higher realities safely. Her first class included a young Vexitar who could create stable wormholes, a former Nexarian who could perceive quantum possibilities, and a human teenager who had learned to exist in 7 dimensions simultaneously. Dr. Lim Ye-jin founded the Institute of Accelerated Research, where problems that had puzzled scientists for centuries were solved in days through the combination of human mental enhancement and alien knowledge. Diseases that had plagued entire species were cured. Technologies that seemed impossible became routine. Admiral Yun Young led exploration missions to distant galaxies, establishing contact with alien civilizations that had never known the touch of primeval influence. Some of these species were hostile, testing the limits of humanity's protective abilities. Others were so advanced that even awakened humans could learn from them. But perhaps the most important development came from an unexpected source. On a routine survey mission to a previously unexplored sector, Captain Song Jae-hyun's integrated fleet discovered something that changed everything. Another galaxy where the primeval ones had never evolved, where intelligent life had developed. Completely independently. They're nothing like us, Song reported to the assembly. No psychic abilities, no reality manipulation, no genetic memory of cosmic power. But they've achieved something we never did. Perfect harmony between 1,000 different species. They've built a civilization based entirely on cooperation and mutual understanding. Are they a threat? Asked Wan In-ho. No, but they might be our teachers. For all our power, we still struggle with conflicts between species, with the temptation to use our abilities to solve problems through force. These beings have never had that option, so they've learned to solve everything through wisdom and patience. The discovery led to the establishment of the Wisdom Exchange, a program where humans and aliens from both galaxies would live and study together, learning different approaches to civilization. Awakened humans learned patience and subtlety from species that had never known power. In return, they shared their abilities to help solve problems that had seemed impossible. As the second year of the new primeval order began, President Ko stood, once again on the observation deck, looking out at the galaxy that had become humanity's responsibility. Ships from hundreds of species traveled peacefully between stars. Children of dozens of different worlds played together in orbital habitats. Knowledge and culture flowed freely between civilizations that had been enemies just 2 years before. Any regrets? Asked Dr. Kang Bo-ra, joining him as she had so many times before. Ko thought about the question seriously. Humanity had gained power beyond imagination, but they had also accepted responsibility for the welfare of trillions of beings across thousands of worlds. They could have chosen transcendence, stepping beyond physical reality to explore infinite possibilities. Instead, they had chosen to stay and build something better in the reality they knew. No regrets, he said finally. Our ancestors explored the multiverse and found wonders beyond counting.